Hello everyone, in this lecture we will be learning page object model. So let's see what is page object model. So first of all, this page object model is also called page object design pattern. So at the same time we will be learning the best practices in page object model and how to implement this. But let's get deep dive into that and let's understand it. So page object model is an object design pattern that is popularly used in test automation for better testing experience. So in this technique, a page class is created for each web page of the web application. This page class contains web elements and methods for action to be performed on these web elements. So these web elements and methods are accessed by test cases which are written in separate test class file. So what I mean by that is basically, so if you go to our tech global web page, so we are creating a page object model classes for this each pages that we have on the web page. So if you remember that we have used this HTML web elements class in many places, right? Like we use these practices in our many tests. If you go to our framework, for example, so we didn't use it in here, but we used it a lot for the selectors, and we use it a lot for the user actions. Also, we use a lot for the HTML elements. So we are, if you can mention that, we are keep calling like same locators again and again and again, and this is not a proper way. Because imagine that in the future, in that page, for example, some locators might change, and you might need to go and replace all these locators. So with the page object model for each page and the web page, web application, we are providing these locators from the single source, and we are pulling these locators from there. So when we need to change them, whenever we change the source of these locators where we store, then those changes is going to reflect all of your classes. That's why is POM, this is the reason that why we use the POM. First, maintainability. Web applications change over the time. As I just mentioned, UI elements might be added, removed, or modified. With POM, if a UI change occurs, you would only need to update the corresponding page object, not every individual test that interacts with that page. So this is what I mean. So you don't need to change everything in here, because since these all web elements that we use in here are going to come from a single source, when you change the source, that source is going to reflect all of these test files. Reusability. Common operations like logging in can be defined once in the page object and reused across multiple tests. So what does it mean is, again, basically, let's say we have a hello paragraph, right? For example, we have used this hello paragraph many times. We always just hard-code it, write it again and again. So you don't need to do that. Once you create a page object for this one, you are only going to call that method, and that method will always represent hello paragraph for you. You don't need to concern about it anymore. Readability. Tests written using page object are more readable. They tend to follow a higher level descriptive syntax, making it easier to understand the flow and intention of the tests. So separation of concerns. Page object separates the test logic from the page structure. This distinction means your test focus on the what, like login or submit form, rather than how, like clicks on this button or etc. So as I say, our page names, like these page object classes, going to represent this each page in the web application. And by naming this each page, we will know what we will find in where. So as you can see in here, let's say we have a home page, right? And we will create a page object class for this home page test file. Then this page object class, we will create the locators and the methods. And we can use this home page class methods in any of our test cases, because right now, from now on, it's resources single, because we were not implementing this kind of logic before. So we were just writing the same code again and again and the different classes for the different tests. But right now, this test always going to come from the single resource. So what are the best practices while creating the POM? So single responsibility principle. Each page object should represent a single page or a significant section component of a page. It shouldn't be responsible for functions outside of its designed page section. So what I'm saying is the page object class that we will create for the home page should not contain anything inside the product page or billing page or checkout page. These all pages should have their own page object classes. Avoid hard-coding the data. Instead of hard-coding the data like username and passwords, we can directly get these into page objects by creating methods too. So methods return page objects. Methods in a page object that navigate to new page should return an instance of the page object for the new page. This allows for methods chaining and makes the test scripts more readable. So this is really important, but this implementation could change company to company. But the best practice, avoiding assertions in page object. So page objects should only be responsible for abstracting the structure and the behavior of web page. What I mean by that, the structure of the web page, the web elements. The behavior, let's say clicking on something, right? Or like putting your username and password. But you should not do any assertion inside the page object. You should not use any should or you should not use any expect. These assertions should be inside your test class. But some companies still implementing in their methods. But the best practice is always keeping the assertions and the test cases inside your test scripts. So using descriptive method names. So it is very important to have the descriptive method names in your framework. So what I mean by that, let's say you have a user input, right? You will provide your username and password and you will click on login. So your method name for this user action should be really specific, that should be easily identified and understandable from someone who is using that framework other than you. And that person, when they see the method name, they will understand what's the purpose of that method. And as well as with this one, I would also like to I would also like to add that like adding a comments on each method that you create inside the page object, like explaining what that method does, what is the reason that you method that use, like explaining this and the page object is also really crucial. Organize with directories. As your test suite grows, organize your page objects into directories reflecting the structure of your application. We will see it where to put these like page objects and encapsulate component logic. If a page has complex components that are reused across different pages, like date picker or model dialog, consider creating a separate component objects for them. We will to get into those, like we are going to because like slowly convert all of our existing tests in the page object too. But let's see how the page looks with the page object and without the page object. So as you can see, we have a user action, right? We visit the login page, then we put our username and password, we click on the submit button. Then when we navigate to different page, we just validate the URL if it's just includes dashboard, and we check if the welcome user is it visible. So as you can see, this all action, because we have two assertions in here, right? This all actions, like this three actions, is just coming from this login page.login directly. So it's making your test file much more cleaner since you are using a page object class pattern. So without POM, directly using Cypress commands to interact with a web page, selectors are written directly in the test case. If the UI changes, you might have to update selectors in multiple test cases, leading to higher maintenance. With POM, all interactions with the login page are abstracted away into the login page class. The test is cleaner and focused on high-level user actions, making it more readable. If the UI changes or selector changes, you would only update the login page class, not all the individual tests. So let's see that together, that how we can do. So in our web page, we also have, let's see like which kind of page we can interact and use. Drop down alerts, multiple windows, tables and actions. We can actually use this login function in here. So we will provide the username and password, which is going to take us to this like login form. We can do this, we can use this validation. So this is the login function. So let's just create a first test file for this one. So I will say 07 underscore login function. Let's say just say login, or what we can name it. Let's just say login.cy.js. So first I will create my test block. So what I'm going to do is I will call my describe. Let's say login page tests. So normally what we would do cy.visit, then we will go to this front end page, and from here we will do cy.contains, then we will click on this project login function. Let's just take me this one in here. Then by clicking in here, I will provide my username and password. I'm gonna do the test without the page object right now to show you guys the difference. My username ID is username for the input and password. So what I'm going to do is cy.get username and we will using our password ID, and it will be test 1 2 3 4. And after we are going to click on this login button, and which is ID of login button, then I will do cy.get login button dot click. After I provide my login button, I want to validate this text, which is success login message. cy.get success login should be visible. First, let's run this test and let's see how it looks like. npx Cypress open. Oh, I guess still we have this debugger left from here. Let's see if we have a debug. Yeah, we have it in here. I don't see this. Let me just remove this one. Alright. So we have login test. I guess we just missed the click in here. I will rerun the test. Oh, we have like both of them are open actually. Let me just close one of them. Both of them actually. Yep. We have login in here. So we log in, we enter, and we validate text. So let's create a folder called page object, and let's just fetch this folder directly from the page object, and let's make it much more clear. So my suggestion, always have a separate folder for the page object. So you can just go and on the root folder inside the Cypress, let's create a root folder and let's call it pages. And inside pages, let's create a page object and let's name it login page dot js. By the way, these are not tests, so you don't need to use the cy. So you just need to provide this page object. So this is the login page. Then this login page, what we will do, we are going to store all our page objects. By the way, the syntax of this page object model design pattern is when you are creating with the let's say the page name, web application page name, right? If it's a login page, then you should say like it's page. For example, it's a HTML elements page, and you will say HTML elements page. Normally, you could just say HTML elements in your test file. This is what we did actually. For example, we said like selectors, user actions. But if you're gonna create the page object for the user actions, it should be user actions page, for example. So to be able to use a page object, we have to define a class because we are going to import that class and we will call these methods as its objects. So what I'm going to do is login page. Then we created our login page class. So from here, let's say I want to get this, what we have in here inside login page. Oh, by the way, I don't execute this one. Okay. So first one, that what I want to do is like the getting this web elements, right? So let's say go here and let's create our method. Let's say get username field. So I will say return cy.get username, and for the password to get password field, return cy.get password. And I guess we have this submit button. Let me just get these locators. One is the login button. I'll just get these to see them. And let's say get login button, return cy.get, and I will just provide this one. And let's say get login message, return cy.get this success login. So what you need to understand is from now on we can just get these locators from single resource. So if we're gonna need them again, let's say we didn't have the page object, right? And we're gonna interact with this page again with the under test. We have to write them and hard code them again and again. And imagine that these locators change in the future. So you have to come to prevent your test to fail. You have to come back in this each file and validate these, like I'm actually like validate these are like valid locators, and if they change all of them. Like imagine you would have like hundreds of classes or hundreds of tests, so it would be really hard, right? But whenever you just single resource it, you don't need to deal with that anymore. You don't need to worry about it anymore at all, because as you can see in here, in this implementation it's going to do it for you. So you can see on the bottom that we are just importing login page and we are just implementing all those. Actually, let's just do it together so we can see. So first of all, After you just provide this methods, and after make sure that your export default this login page, so you can import this, right? You have to provide this export default, so you can create the object from this class, because we will make this class importable, and from this class we can create the object, and with this object we can call these methods. So in here I'm just going to import this the class that we created. So I will say import login page, and whenever I press tab it's gonna put the rest for me. We can do it together. It will gonna suggest the login page. Whenever I just press tab, it's gonna give me all the direction that I need to interact with this login page. Then from here, all I need to do is inside the describe block, you can create this const. Actually, we don't use like before an abstractions, so that's why it is good to keep it inside. Or actually, no, we don't need to. It should be fine, yeah. Login page. So we are creating an object from our login page. So now we will be able to reach all the functions. So what we did, we use with the cy.get username, right? So instead, what you can do is you can just use login page dot get username field. Since our methods are returns this locator in here, so it will be chainable with another Cypress command, so you will not gonna have any problem with that. So we didn't put this one, by the way. We can put this one too, but let's just keep this one for now, okay? And what we have for the password, login page dot get password field, login page dot get login button, login page dot get login message. Let's run our test and see the result. As you can see, it's passing. So now whenever you are going to call this, for example, username and password fields, you don't need to write these locators again and again, just like we did in here, because we write this so many times, right? For example, like writing this HTML elements, for example, HTML elements, hello paragraph, hello paragraph, hello paragraph. Like whenever you just create this page object, you don't need to worry it anymore, because for example, imagine that this was a hello paragraph, so you will just going to call this method, that's all, and whatever you want to do you can just do with these methods. So, and whenever something is changed in the application on your, let's say, locator, all you need to do is just come here and change this. It's going to reflect all your other tests. Now still we are not done, because still in my opinion our class is not as clean as it should be. So I told you something while explaining the best practices using the page object model. What I told you is basically it is a good practice to like hold all user actions as a method inside your page objects. So my assertion, this is an assertion, right? I'm doing an assertion here with implicit assertion using should. This should never be inside the page object, but this portion is pretty much fine to be inside the page object. There is no problem with that, but it's not suggested to have this one in the page object. So let's just directly implement this inside the page object. So what I'm going to do is basically I will go to my page object, and from this user action I'm gonna create this action, like user action. What was that? Click, like creating the username and password and clicking on login button, right? So what I will do, I will just going to create a method, and let's say user login, and we will provide email and password. So from here, what I'm going to do, since we need to interact with this, like we need to reference these objects, we need to use this keyword in here. So I will be saying in here, this dot get username field. Then from here, type. By the way, it wasn't email, it was username, right? Username. This dot get password field. Type password, and this dot get login button dot click. So now we have this method. All we need to do is go to your page object, and you can get rid of this each step in here. All you need to say is just login page dot user login, and provide this username and password in here. Tag global test 1 2 3 4. So this is gonna do it for you. As you can see, it's working as it's expected, and I think it is much more cleaner, right? So by the way, we can also create some kind of wrapper method in here for this action that we can do, and instead of using that one, we can use that one, that method to implement in our page object. And basically we can even actually create a parent comment inside the comment, because this is not belongs to any page, right? Because I want it to be dynamic, for example, depending on this one. So that's why instead we can actually create a parent comment using command.js. Again, as I say, because this action is not belongs to any page. Actually, yes, we can say it belongs to front-end page, but let's also practice to creating a parent comment, right, on the using command.js as we did before. So let's create a parent comment together. So I will say Cypress dot comments add, and what I'm going to do in here is basically I'm going to give it a name, and I will say click, say cart by title. This is how I'm going to name it, and it's gonna get this title callback. So from here, all I'm going to say is cy dot contains, it will be my title, and click. So from now on, I can directly use this one instead of like calling this again and again, because we are calling this like a lot of times, right? Just by click like contains, click, contains, click. So right now we don't need to do it. What I'm going to do is basically I'm just gonna say cy dot click cart by title. This was the naming we used, right? I just want to make sure. Let's just get this one. Click cart by title. And what is our title in our case? It is, let's just make sure that this project login function. Now let's see how it works. As you can see, it's working as expected. Our parent comment that we created. Let's click on cart. You know what? You can just go and change the other ones too. You can just go ahead and I will just take the method name again. I will take this one and I will remove this one because we don't need to click anymore. It will do it for us. Click cart by title. You can change all of them. Alright, so right now our page is pretty much straightforward and pretty much easier to interact. So if you remember how it looks at first, and if you see now how it looks, actually we can see the difference. What we can do is, instead of this one, I will just take this one, actually take this one, I will just take it to before version. Oh, okay. Then what I'm going to do is I will just provide this one, but I'm just going to remove this describe block because we don't need one more describe. And I'm going to put this one on the top. Let me just format the look. So look at the difference. This is just for you to see like how much commands is depends. I mean, right now, as I say, the action that we did on this page was not too much. That's why maybe you might not see as like too big of a difference. But the thing is, imagine that like you are doing a whole end to end with bunch of user actions, like clicking this button, doing this, selecting the date, selecting something from drop down, selecting some radio button, then like entering some information, etc. Like you can put all these as a method inside the page object as long as there is no assertion. So that's why you can just comment out this one because this below will do our job for us. So from now on, any test we do, we will be always creating a page object. And my suggestion to have a better practice, go ahead and change these all test files and create a page object class for those each pages, as we created this like login page class in here, and use them inside your tests. So as you can see, the maintainability is gonna be much more easier. From now on, if anything changes in my page, all I need to do is just go ahead. Oh, by the way, I don't even need this one, right? I don't know why I have this. I forgot this one because I have already locators coming from here. So as I say, from now on, if anything changes in my page, all I need to do is like I don't need to go in each test file. Imagine that, like, right, you are needing these locators and these tests many times. So imagine like going into each test file and changing them one by one. It should be so hard to maintain. But from now on, since it's always going to come from inside my page object, all I need to do is just change this one in case if anything changes from our developer. So this was the page object. Then thank you very much for your time. See you in next lecture.